Thank you so much for coming out. Special thanks to our panelists today, people from the DC natives with a wealth of knowledge about what we're going to talk about today. My name's Sam P.K. Collins. Some of y'all might know me from All Eyes on DC, but today I'm serving the capacity here as the head of the local initiating committee of what's called the Pan-African Federalist Movement. This is a movement to unify Africans around the world politically within less than a generation, and to continue the work that was laid down for us during the 1950s and 60s as Africans on the continent were gaining their independence, and we on this side of the world were fighting for our self-determination. All of those movements were moving in synergy, and many decades later, we haven't realized the true self-determination that we sought, and we see that time and time again, especially this past week with the Don't Mute DC movement, with what pretty much spurred the Don't Mute DC movement, because the Don't Mute DC movement is a very good movement. It was in response to a force that wanted to kill DC people's way of life, that wanted to cut down the music, that didn't understand why it is that people who are black in Washington, D.C. listen to go-go music and why they appreciate it. And this is exactly what happens when Washingtonians are losing their property and lose pretty much their calling card, the signal that tells them that they're self-determined and that they can control the political, social affairs in their own neighborhoods. We can't even do that right now. So this situation, even though it was solved in less than a week, really calls to question what is our next move as African people in getting our business straight. You understand? Can I get an ashe for that, please? Ashe. All right, that is the question that we have to ask ourselves. And we cannot be relentless. We have to be relentless in asking about that, you know, because we cannot afford to be reactive. We have to be proactive. So today's conversation about ownership and about protecting our cultural economy along with everything else that is ours, we're speaking about it in the context of Pan-African Federalism, a system by which working class people, African people, black people of African descent, African people with a black consciousness who understand what it is, make sure that they can control their affairs. Because even though we're free, nominally, and we have black leaders, right? People are still not working in the interest of all Africans, and they're not being communal. So Pan-African Federalism is a system through which we can make that happen. And before we go into today's presentation, today's conversation, I'm going to allow a Baba that brought me into this, and a Baba who's very involved in organizing the Pan-African Federalist Movement nationally and internationally. I'm going to allow him to speak more on that, to give us more context, to help us understand, because today, you guys are going to get the local. Don't get it wrong. After this, we're going to stop talking, and you guys are going to get the local, but you guys need to get the international first for just a quick second. So I'm going to introduce Baba Sengo Baye, y'all. Let's give him a hand, y'all, please.
Yeah, greetings, everybody. And first, let me apologize to everybody for our lateness, and let me apologize also. Originally, this event was going to be bringing a sister from Tanzania, who is the daughter-in-law of Julius Nyerere. Many of you who may not know of Julius Nyerere, and we're not going to have the time to talk about all the great ancestral work that has gone on, and I mean gone on for a long time. However, I'm going to try to be as brief as possible because Sam was wise enough to maintain the space to address issues that the local initiating committee, which is really a super committee, and the reason we call it super because it represents millions of Africans in the DMV. Sam is actually the chairperson of that committee. That committee is working on issues that people every day in Washington, D.C. deal with. And I want you to be very clear, we're not mixing the oranges with apples. We're actually continuing the work that is required so that we can get up off the bottom of the rung and get back to the top. And I'm going to try to break that down as quickly as possible. Let me start with the international. In 2014, a group of Senegalese came together following the teachings of Sheikh Anta Diop and studying Kwame Nkrumah and Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, and a lot of people who had talked about a unified African people globally so that we have the kind of power that is required to stop the oppression. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Yeah. See, because we have everything we need, but unification and controlled direction. And you're going to hear that from a local perspective in terms of gentrification. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm also born and raised here in DC, a third generation DC person, and I'm also involved with a lot of other issues. I also served 8 years as the President General of the Garvey movement, which is 105 years of age. So I've traveled the world, I have seen quite a bit. And one of the interesting things is, all of our people agree that we got to do something ourselves. Now the question is, how do we get organized to do it ourselves? Because doing it ourselves is great to talk about it, but it's time to walk the walk. Too many people are dying, too many people are homeless, too many people are under, well, let me say this, I'm starting internationally. Most people think the depression that we face as African people is devastating here in the United States. It is more devastating than you can imagine in Brazil. I don't have time to go all into that. They don't report about killings in Brazil. They don't deal with issues that we deal with. It's deep. But at any rate, the group of brothers and sisters that came up with the concept in Senegal was studying what we had done. Now, I don't have time to go all into all of the conferences and all of the plans that we've done to try to pull us up and all of the positives and the negatives. I don't have time to do that. However, I will say in December, after 60 years of the first Pan-African conference that Kwame Nkrumah called shortly after independence in 1958, and if you take notes and you want to ask questions later or you want to get with us, I'll clarify anything that you may not understand. 60 years celebration took place in Ghana, Accra, Ghana, on December the 8th to the 13th, the exact same days that was done 60 years ago. And the reason that was done is because we understand that Ghana is a Black Star state, meaning there's a lot of expatriates in Ghana. You know, this year's a big year for Ghana, but that's not new. The right to a vote has been happening for about 20 years. So there's a lot of brothers and sisters from the United States actually from all over the world in Ghana, in addition to the original citizens. Anyway, this conference was very successful. A. Peter Bailey, who's one of our consultants and a journalist, like my good brother Sam, who worked with Malcolm X, is one of the people that work with us. He's in New York doing a program today. So I say that because this is not a new movement. It's not a movement to tell people to come out of your other movements. You have to continue to organize on all levels, and that's what we're doing. However, we understood that this conference was a call initially. Now that conference went well. I don't have time to go all into it, but I will pass some things around so you can take a look at what happened. We can start here and everybody can get that. That's basically what came, a summary of what came out of the conference. Now after the conference, the group out of Senegal folded out because this is a grassroots movement. And we understand that things don't happen from the top down. They happen from the bottom up. And if the people on the bottom are not getting what they're just due, then those people at the top are not doing their job. Everybody understands that, right? Yep. So we're a bottom-up movement. We're not a movement to alternative to the UNI, alternative to the PGI, all these different organizations. We want all those organizations to be on board and to be along with this movement. Regardless to the differences we may have, we need to come together for what we have in common. Now, in wrapping up, let me say, before I get nationally, let me say on an international level, the IPC is now an international body. It used to be just leaders out of Senegal. Now it's Africans from all over the world. We have over 12 regions, 8 that are functional right now. Many on the continent, in the UK, in the Caribbean, and this region, North America, RIC, is called the Regional Initiating Committee of North America, including Canada and including the US. We like to move from a continental perspective because we are caught in this divisive thing. I'm in this state, or I'm from Jamaica, or I'm from Nigeria. That's divisive. That was all set up by somebody else. We need to get back to the holistic thing. So we call ourselves continental. So we say, you know, the regions are basically, in Africa, they aren't continental. They're broken up in Africa. But outside of that, the Caribbean is a region. Latin America is a region, and North America. Our interest here in North America, and I serve as the chief organizer of the local initiating committees. What we want people to do is to basically say they agree that we need this work done. There's a petition on the table. That's very important. We're doing this petition as a campaign. We're in the campaign mode now. All of the regions are collecting signatures because once we get to a point where we go past the campaign mode, we need to show that people really want what we're doing. So for an example, in Nigeria, there are problems in Africa that I don't have time to get into. You know, they can't even travel from one point to another point. I mean, it's crazy because of the Berlin Conference. However, we understand that with power, we can change that paradigm. With the people in Nigeria and people who support them all around the world, we can change that quicker than you can imagine. Don't have time to go deep into that. And y'all forgive me for rushing because I don't want to take a lot of time from the panelists because they're going to deal with a specific issue. I'm dealing with issues, not just one, all of them, because it's many. Not only reparation, I mean, we could go down the line. We got a lot of issues. Now, everybody can do something, but some people are not going to do certain things. But everybody can do something, and that's important. Now, after this took place in Ghana, and the regions were formed, a group was formed. Now, what we're moving to is to create a unified thinking of African people by the next generation. Not 2064, we're talking 2020 and 2021, next generation. That is, people say, well, how are you going to do that? Well, let me explain something to you. Marcus Garvey had over 25,000 people that came to Madison Square Garden in 1920. They were very successful. The Indiana Conference, it wouldn't be no black caucus today if that conference didn't take place. So when we come together on one accord fighting for issues, we get stuff done. However, some things have fallen through the cracks. I mean, like if you look at the Black Caucus today, for example, I'm not going to trash them, but certainly they don't have the kind of power that came out of that Indiana conference, okay? So now coming to the United States, we are heavy in Chicago, we're heavy in LA, we're heavy in Atlanta, and we have a big conference, we're calling it a convention that's going to be taking place in 2020 in Atlanta, between the times of October the 15th through the 18th. Don't want you to get too caught in that. We are in the process of really building locally initiated committees. I'll be in Atlanta next week, and it's moving very well. Somebody's doing a presentation today. Locally, we want to make sure that the issues that we deal with are conducive to what our community is facing. And gentrification in Washington, D.C. is an extremely critical issue. So you won't get all of the answers today, but certainly please, before you leave, sign the petition if you agree over the other, that everybody agrees that until we have the basics of food, clothing, and shelter, and we got to have control of land, then we're not going anywhere. Mostly everybody is going to agree to that. Okay? So once we got over 25,000 signatures or more in this region and all the other regions, that's going to give us a lot of signature power. Last but not least, it's a call. To become a part of what we're doing, we ask you to answer a call that our ancestors made, not us. Our ancestors did it, and if you haven't studied, you know, many of them, from Malcolm X to Kwame Nkrumah, and don't let me just talk about brothers Nannie Helen Burroughs, and people in DC should really know Nannie Helen Burroughs, Anna Julia Cooper, Mary Ann Shadd Cary. These are names of women who were instrumental in bringing us where we are today. A lot of times our sisters don't get the kind of credit that they deserve, but one of our things is to educate brothers and sisters that it was not only brothers who worked with the movement. For an example, the first Pan-African Congress, most people think of W.E. Du Bois. Wrong. The person who started that was Henry Sylvester Williams, and Anna Julia Cooper was his assistant. Anna Julia Cooper taught in Washington, D.C., taught Nannie Helen Burroughs. So what I'm trying to say is we're top heavy with issues that relate to womanism energy. I'm not going to say feminism, womanism energy, because without women, there is nothing going to move forward. So in closing, we had the call, and when you sign that, we put you in our database. You get to know what's happening. If you're in this area, Brother Sam will let you know some of the things we're dealing with. He's doing a great job getting us to see that we're not asking you to join another organization. In fact, we don't even have a dues set up at this point. What we are asking you to do is answer the call to let our other brothers and sisters know who may not be as conscious that we got to do something ourselves and stop always asking the one who oppresses us to change. There's going to be no change without power. Frederick Douglass made it very clear. There's going to be no change without power. Now, when we say power, I'm not talking about black power. I love black power. I'm talking about authentic, I call it blacktricity, authentic power, meaning every living cell on the planet, and I'm closing, every living cell or life form on the planet has blacktricity. It's the love that our Creator, regardless of how you look at it, passed on to us, created us out of love. That's why I call it the Blacktricity. Later on, you'll know more about that Blacktricity, because I believe that we have to reach our young brothers and sisters where they are, and all of them don't read. Some of them look at the technology, some of them do this, but the Blacktricity is when you see somebody dance and sing, because we heavy on that.
Yes.
That's our Blacktricity.
Yeah.
When we play basketball, we play football, when we excel it, that's our Blacktricity. Because we are the parents of all human life. Y'all hear me? Now, some people say, well, single, white people, that's not true. White people came from us. So we're not opposed to white people, but we're opposed to a system that was put in place to oppress us, which was done by some folks who came, I call it our lost children. Because like a lot of times people say, what's happening with our youth, black youth? But what's happening with the white folk that are oppressing us? Y'all hear what I'm saying? They're going amok. They're killing the planet. So to change that, we have to rise up and go back to what our ancestors laid out. And they did it all, y'all. I mean, they laid it out. Here in Washington, D.C., for an example, I like to call it Watch Shaitan, because it's a part of that that's not respected to Banneker City. Now, in closing, Chocolate City, I mean, believe me, I love Washington, D.C. I've traveled the world, but it's unique. The DMV is unique. We got a lot of great things going on, but should we have homeless people? Should we have people losing their homes? Because we are under attack. And we're under attack with what we eat. We're under attack on every level, but we have to be organized in how we get out of that. So in closing, I thank y'all for coming out. I really appreciate the work that Brother Sam is doing, because it's not about him, me, or she. It's about we collectivity in the 21st century for true sovereignty. We got to raise our Blacktricity.
All right.
Give Brother Sam your hand. In the spirit of keeping the Blacktricity going and really educating our people, we're going to pivot to the panel discussion. Perfect. Okay. So at this moment, I'm going to briefly introduce our three panelists, and then from that point, I will allow them each 2 minutes to talk about who they are more, their industry, and pretty much their memories of Shaw coming up, either during their adolescence or even in recent years before the so-called gentrification. Is that cool, family? All right, perfect. So, to my immediate right, I got Ms. Wanda Henderson. She owns Wanda's on 7th. Booming entrepreneur, native Washingtonian, and a person with a lot of institutional history. And I'm very excited to have her speak today. Let's give her a hand, family. All right. Next to Ms. Wanda, I have Brother Tone P. Tone P is an award-winning producer from DC. He was pretty much at the front of the Don't Mute DC movement this week. He and many others on the front lines, spreading the word, organizing people, really putting the message out there that it is about Don't Mute DC, but it's also about ownership and business acumen within the go-go industry and in DC in general. So I'm very, very excited to have the brother here. He was very enthusiastic about being on the panel. So I know he's going to give us the gospel today. Let's give Tone P a hand, y'all. Last but not least, in the spirit of making sure that ownership is key, charity begins at home. So we got none other than Brother Charles View here. I've known Charles almost my whole life, pretty much, middle school on up. So, and it's good to know that today he's helping people. So he has a goal. You mind if I tell the people? So we're talking about 36 people this year, 35 people that he's going to help, be on their way to home ownership. He's already at person number 6. And we're in the second quarter. So if you know of anybody, just get him aware and he'll hook that up. But today, he's gonna help all of us by pretty much telling us what are the missing keys to home ownership for black people collectively. Why is it that we're behind the fold? We understand about oppression, but why is it that we're unable to navigate this system even with the little bit that we've gotten in the last few decades? So once again, I'm very excited for our panelists here. And we're gonna start with Ms. Wanda. 2 minutes, if you can just talk about your industry and what it is that you do.
All right, thank you, Sam, and good day, everyone.
Good day.
My name is Wanda Henderson. I own Wanda's on 7th Salon and Spa, where I have 20 employees. We do men and women's services. I've been there since 2003, and gentrification formed for me in 2004. So it was a battle of where I was told, you'll be out in 6 months. And I was like, I've never seen this before. I grew up in Detroit Park 50-something years. And so to have a business on 7th Street was extremely huge for me. So being said, with that said, it was 11 businesses that were there. And again, being there and owning your property is important because you don't have to be displaced like that. The outcome was, out of 11 businesses, I was the only one that was able to return. So it was an 8-year fight, but we did win. We moved out, we relocated for 4 years, and I moved my staff to another location so they could continue to work. And so we all came back in 2010. So this June 2nd, we'll be back 5 years. And as I was told by the district that I was only the 6th black woman in the United States to return from gentrification. So I'm saying that gentrification is strong. If we don't stand up for housing, shelter, clothing, food, you know, we have to do it. We have to do it. The fight is strong, but we can beat it.
Hey, how everybody's doing? My name is Selfie. I'm a producer here, music producer. I took go-go and I fused it with hip hop to bring you artists like Wale and, to work with J. Cole and many other artists. And I was on the front line, with the entire Don't Mute DC situation. I'll get into that a bit after this, but the point of the ownership piece here is like with the go-go community and being so close to it for so long on the industry side. I noticed that, a big problem that us as a community in DC, we haven't been able to maximize on what we've started here, generated and made thousands of dollars over the years, but we failed to make to capitalize and structure internal system here where we can capitalize on things. And that's a big deal because when people come here, go-go music is compiled of a bunch of cover songs. And the problem with that is we don't own that.
Right.
That's why when people come here, it's hard for us to actually move forward and maximize on what we've built because we don't own it. So I've been encouraging people when me and Wale started, it gave us the ammunition to make original content under the go-go genre. Right? And so we've been able to travel around the world and we've done so many other things that go-go bands haven't been able to accomplish because of what we've done. Because of the music that we made, we own the music. Also, I wanted to tap on, we'll get into it. I want to introduce the brother, we'll come back to that, so thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Charles View. I'm a native Washingtonian, born and raised here. As Sam said, I do a realtor full time. So my background is being born and raised here in DC and seeing how the neighborhoods and things were changing around me on my route to go to school every morning. I got curious about it, and the more stuff I started asking about real estate, the more I got intrigued and realized that, hey, this is something I can see that I want to take advantage of, but also to see that there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me in those spaces. While I was in college, I interned for a real estate company that was black owned, and I was able to see a black man as a mentor that showed me, hey, this is what you can do in real estate through vertically integrating, owning from the bottom up, and this is what you can do with these businesses. And so that planted that seed for me. So when I graduated, I did property management for about 5 years and been doing sales full time. And as I said, Sam had mentioned, my goal is to help as many people as possible and understand how you can build wealth and how you build generational wealth through real estate.
Thank y'all for those introductions. My first question goes to Ms. Wanda. If, however much you feel like divulging, could you walk us through that 6-year process, 5 to 6 year process where that got you to return, to Shaw? Like, what did you have to do in terms of just making it back there, you know, how was it, you know, as far as just negotiating with, you know, the banks or whoever else, you know, to get back there?
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very difficult process. It was difficult because, for one, once we moved out, the requirements for me to come back was enormous. You know, if you move out, first of all, if you have a staff that's been with you, you know, you just can't displace them. So I took the funds that I had and placed them somewhere else where they all can continue to work together. And in that process, I was negotiating still with the developers and coming back, and it kept changing. Well, we're the agreements. We wanted 2,200 square feet. They wanted to give me 1,400 square feet. They wanted me to move down the street when the agreement was to come back to that same location. It was, to me, criminal, but I wasn't going to take no for an answer. So I prayed God every day because I never seen this. I grew up in Detroit for 50-something years. The black businesses was there since I was a little girl, and they moved away. But I was determined I was coming back. If I didn't make but $1 profit, I'm coming back. So it was constantly changing, and even going to the banks. If you don't make 10% of what you made the following year, they can't lend it to you. So if you want $50,000, you now have to make $500,000. That didn't work. I mean, the banks don't always work for you. So like when we're talking about ownership, we have on properties, then you have an investment piece. You have something to go to the bank with. Sometimes I still had properties, but it was during a time that, you know, that the market failed, so it's nothing there. So I was blessed to have some investors to come in, saw what was going on with me, and I had 2 investors to put up over $100,000 each to make sure that I returned back. And just the requirements for me to get back, how much money do you have in the bank? What are your projections? I mean, this is what we want, and we had no specs. So I was fortunate enough to have an architectural group that came in, saw what was going on, and worked day and night to make sure that we returned back in our space. And man, you go to city council, you shouldn't have to do all that just to come back to where you were. You know, it was there. I should have been exempt from a lot of things, but it was always the thing of saying, we'll pressure her out.
Yes.
Couldn't pressure sister, so she get back, and so seeing this, it was difficult, but anything that we want to do, we can do that. Real estate, go-go, businesses, whatever it is, no, it's not the answer. We can do that.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
I have the best business on 7th Street. Matter of fact, they come to me and say, the developers say, Wanda, this is something that turned out wonderful. You're the best business on our block. You're the best business in Shaw. Because we fought that every day. We can do it. We done it.
I got one follow-up question, and then we'll move on to Tone. So that process that you just gave, man, it was pretty action-packed, and you know, I heard a lot of names. You know, can you speak to the importance of having a good network? You know, as a business person, it's like, you know, you didn't just talk finances; you were talking names. You know, people who had skills. You know, why is that so powerful for you in this industry?
It's powerful because it's a network. You name names that people will come out and help you. It's just like this room here. You know, you bring this network together. Everybody here has a skill that, you know, and what they can do and how to raise money. So we can come together and create. If we don't have our banks, we have our investment groups, you know, to invest in each other to grow. So I formed my own, where I knew a lot of people from over the years. I have over 40 years in the business, so I knew a lot of people who wouldn't mind investing in me. And so when I went to them, they came to me and said, yeah, but we'll do that. They believed in me, because that's a lot of money. And they believed in me, so if you put your best foot forward and you got a network of people, you'll make it.
All right.
I got a similar question for you, Tone. This is a 2-tier question, you know. So, with you and Wale, you know, just bringing in that go-go hip-hop fusion into the industry, how would you say that gave you leverage, you know, over other artists? They don't even have Charles, I want you to gear up to walk us through the whole ownership process, if you don't mind. How does one go from becoming a renter to an owner, right? So that's going to come up in just a bit. So P, I want you to, once again, you can give as much or as little as you want to, but I want you to speak about, as far as like profiting, off of that sound, like how much profit, whether it's monetary, network-wise, cloud, whatever the case is, since that sound has been brought to the mainstream, how much of that would you say you have brought? How has it helped you as far as build a foundation for your other ventures, whatever else you want to go into?
Well, you trying to say how much using the go-go genre, how much success has it brought, and how did that?
Yes, sir.
Say it again, like.
Yeah, so like bringing the go-go sound and making it mainstream, how has it helped? What kind of dividends has it brought you? Because,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, clearly we made some money. We, if you ever heard of Wale, he's a millionaire. So if I'm up under him, I made a couple $100,000. The thing is, with that situation, we're right. Well, I'm gonna keep it like this. I'm a solution-oriented guy. I like working on solution. We could talk a million miles. Like, what's his name? Rubber Saying Gold. Like, we could talk all day about, the effects. I'm all about the cause, because you cut the head off, the body falls. That's just what it is. We get too wrapped up in talking about the effects and being reactive in between, right? And so my thing is, right now we're actively working on, like, going back to what I said about the, setting up a strong financial structure within the music business in the go-go community. We're actually working right now, me and my team, doing something with Apple right now. I can't say too much because people be trying to jump on it and blah, blah, blah. And I want to make sure it's done right.
Yes.
Because it's bigger than me. It's a agenda that's going to actually benefit the entire go-go community in terms of ownership. So just know that. So we're working with Apple and Spotify, and we're actively seeking a couple of things right now. So I can't even elaborate on that.
No problem.
Right
No
now.
problem.
As long as it's in the works.
Yeah, it's definitely works.
Definitely appreciate that. So just to recap, for those of y'all who are taking notes, right? So you want to be original. So you want to make something that tends to people's needs, and then once you have it, you have to own it, right? And then that can help you jump off to the next step. If you're a business owner, you have to have people who know you, who know your craft, who believe in you. You have to have a network of investors and people with clout and leverage. That's another part. Now, Charles is going to bring us to the home ownership part. How do I, a renter, walk along this journey to true home ownership?
So the question is, how do you go from a renter to a homeowner? The first step is you have to understand that whole entire process. And one of the key things is credit. Credit is a really big thing that can either help or hinder you into how you're moving forward. Fortunately, that's just one of the indicators that's going to be used for some people to get jobs and be able to do things is credit. So as a renter, it can take you anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get your score into a good position that allows you to get in a position to actually get a loan from a bank. You want to go through the whole entire home buying process, or you just you want to keep it short and sweet?
Hit the most important part. So
The most important part, first and foremost, will be credit. You obviously going to have to bring some sort of money towards the table for down payment.
Right.
And then in terms of you understanding exactly how much that is, it coincides with what your buying power is going to look like. First conversation is talking with a lender. That can be someone from your current banking institutions, or anyone that, the mortgage lender, and they can give you, before pulling your credit, just an idea of what that structure looks like. Well, hey, this is what you need to do in the next 6 months, 12 months, so on and so forth. There's also tons of home buying programs that are in the area. And there's, just a rundown really quickly in DC, there's HPAC, there's MANA, there's NACA, which is probably the best one out there, but it's going to take a longer process than when you go through NACA. And there's something called DC Open Doors. Each one has the variations of what they want to provide, but somewhere from a grant money that you don't have to pay back but you have to stay in it for a certain amount of time, or they'll actually give you a non-interest loan that can go towards the down payment closing costs that you don't have to pay back for 5 years, and then just the principal only. But that's getting a little more into details. But with a mixture of those things, you can get yourself into a home. It doesn't have to be that big, humongous home, because a larger home means more property taxes, more insurance, more utility bill. But get something that fits within your living lifestyle currently that you can then build upon as you want to go down this wealth building journey.
Okay, follow-up question. Yeah. So my follow-up is, how much money do you have to bring to the loan people, and what is the ideal loan to debt ratio? So this is a loaded question, you know, because you're talking about a generation who has amassed a huge amount of debt. So how can I, as somebody who is working class, I have a lot of debt, how can I go to my loan officer, right? What's the ideal situation even for me, even with, you know, these programs that are out there?
Well, that with that, you know, I know a lot of people have, you know, debt. They deal with that. That either from student loan debts to consumer debt. And in the eyes of a lender, you want to eliminate as much of that consumer debt as possible, so your income to debt ratio falls in line with, hey, you have enough income coming in to set aside towards paying the mortgage. That's the most important thing they're looking at. So to answer your question, there's not necessarily a particular number for the income to debt, but for, you know, most people who are going to be buying a home for the first time are going to use an FHA loan, which is 3.5% down. So whatever that purchasing price of that home is, you know that 3.5% is what you need to bring to the table for the down payment, and then there's also an additional 3% for closing costs. So just to keep thinking very general, if you know that, hey, you know, I can afford, you know, $1,500 a month in rent, you know, that equivalents to around $200,000 home that you could probably live in. So knowing that, you know, that depends upon the interest rate and of course your credit is. The better your credit is, the better interest rate you will receive, and the more money the bank's going to give you. So knowing that, okay, cool, 200,000, 6.5% is what I need to have in my pocket towards down payment and closing costs to help me get into that property. And then if you also tie into some of those first-time home buyer programs, that can eliminate you having to come out of pocket. Something else.
Okay, we have a couple questions in the audience. I'm gonna let Ty go, and then Ahmed.
How pivotal is black banks in doing business? Do you do work with black banks? Like, just any of you all just working with black banking institutions, what does that look like? Have you all been involved with black banks? Why is it important to work with black banks when you're dealing with your investments?
Okay, so dealing with black banks, and again, it's the same structure as this gentleman had said. It depends on your credit, what it's exactly you're trying to buy, and even if there was a little more lenient, right? Almost the same, I would think, most of the same applies. I went to a black bank, but, you know, I couldn't get any help, and I went to, you know, the other banks, and I didn't get any help. Because if you need $500,000 and they're talking about $20,000, get the wrong bank. So, that's when investors become a part for commercial. Now, buying a home in DC that I've seen, some of my customers talk about first-time home buyers, and, you know, you have people with, you know, kids and 2-3 kids, and a regular job, most of them, a decent house, you know, maybe Deanwood, right? You're talking about $300,000 to $400,000, right, minimum, you know, and if you live in the Shaw area, I mean, it's $1 million, so you can't buy anything here, so you're limited to an area right now, and monies are tight. I mean, I know that going through the credit issues, you know, making sure the credit's okay, but I think income becomes a big factor. That people, once you talk about your mortgage, your daycare, your everyday expenses, how much you actually need to make to survive and pay a mortgage payment, because if you don't make the payment, they're gonna take the house. You have a question for me, sweetie?
Yeah, I wanted to know what your business is. I was real late.
No problem. It's a hair salon and barber shop. Wanda's on 7th.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
Hold on one second, my fault.
That's what that.
She can continue.
Oh, yeah, if I could respond to what
problem.
she was just saying, I think we have to consider going back to not being like nuclear families. We need to work as families and extended families, because as she just pointed out, it's difficult for an individual to buy a home, but we need to, know each other enough so that we can trust each other and do business together and work as families. People with money in this country, that's how they do it.
That's funny. I was about to bring that. I was about to ask to say what she
We
was
all
saying.
on the
That's so funny.
same vibe, wavelength, everybody in this room.
Yeah, because I know,
It's the
I know
same
doing,
spirit talking.
I know doing business in general, even outside of the home ownership conversation. When I do business,
Yeah.
I don't think to run to a bank first. I think first thing I think of is how can I look beside the brothers that I do business with already, who already at a certain stature and a certain tier. How can we work a situation out for my business to open and thrive?
Right.
Because it's not just an opening conversation, it's opening, marketing, and creating a financial revenue, which I know this person over here might be a party promoter who makes around $500,000 a year, who can help me out with that anyway, and then we can just work out the details, and him, we all owning the store together, period. Because a bigger conversation is too, like, a lot of us always want to single-handedly own stuff.
Yeah.
That is a big, and it's all going back to being a control, it's a controlling, oppressing mindset. You see what I'm saying? So just to piggyback on what you said, I was just gonna bring that up, but that's obviously true.
No, but it's good. One last thing, one last thing. I was glad to hear you mention the vertical business model. That's key.
It's a big deal.
That's
Because
key.
everybody thinks the
That's
right
how
to a
Barry
bank.
Gordy
Right.
did it. That's how I found out about it. That's how Barry Gordy did it,
Yep.
and
I didn't
I
know
to study that more.
That's amazing. You need another music guy.
Yes.
So just to recap, before we go to Ahmed, Baba up front, and then Baba Senghor.
No.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, the gentleman was first.
I thought it was you, Ahmed, right?
She can go ahead.
No, I just wanted him to explain the vertical integration.
Well,
You
okay,
mentioned
yeah.
it, vertical
Okay.
integration, what is that?
So vertically integrated is basically where you have a business that you own all the complement parts of that structure. Like for instance, McDonald's. They own everything from the trucks to the food to the real estate, everything that coincides with McDonald's. So that way they know that they'll get the best value for everything they want to do.
And like Barry Gordy, he did the whole style, the costumes, the making the music, everything that went into the production.
Yes.
He did that. He provided it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I got a kind of got a series of questions. So I'm from east of the river, Temple Hills, and the Temple Hills area, and I know that there's, like, I'm just telling people that there's a bunch of houses going up for sale. I've been trying to convince
year with Temple Hills.
Yeah, I've been trying to convince people that, like, one, Southeast is the golden mile right now because unfortunately this side of the city already been gentrified.
Yes.
And with Berry Farms going down, and I'm seeing white people biking across the bridge and everything now, I'm trying to encourage as many black people to come on to this side of the city and eliminate that fear of Southeast. And so my question is, how have you navigated the conversation, encouraging others with the renter's mindset to elevate to ownership?
I think that's a question for everybody.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
wait, I don't-
absolutely.
Yeah. So part of that conversation is first and foremost people's financial intelligence, understanding the importance of that. First and foremost, knowing how money works, how interest, how credit cards work. That as a foundation is something that we all should know, and I feel like should be taught in high school.
Yes.
Personal finance.
Thank you.
So once you understand how personal finance work, how you work for yourself, it translates to your business, it translates to whatever you're going to be doing in life. So that being said, we know that prices in DC are very, very expensive to live here. And we know that some of those areas in which are affordable are east of the river, deep northeast, Deanwood, at Marshall Heights. And so if you already, I was born and raised, and how real estate works is once you see commercial real estate comes around, jobs start from people actually doing the construction. then those businesses will come in, like one of Wanda's will come in and do their real estate, not real estate, but run their business, and then those people who are working there are now going to want places to live, therefore that's going to sprawl out to the residential side. So if you start seeing some of those economic indicators and those, okay, there's going to be potential of, if I buy this home for $200,000 or $300,000 now, it's going to increase in value in the next 5 to 10 years. And you can use that equity to do other things that you want to do in business or whatnot. So I know I went on a tangent, sorry.
No, it's fine, man. I wanted to kind of just touch on the fact that, like, he kind of brought it up, and I'm gonna go deeper into it, because economics is a really complex conversation, right? For somebody to just jump in and, like, you know, for most of it, let's take accountability for this. Most black folks don't really get into this realm until they become like late 20s, early 30s, if they get there. Some people maybe 35, 40. Now, my thing is, like, it all goes back to this. Like, we need to start taking ownership, honestly, of our kids. First and foremost, I'm gonna tell you why that makes, why that's relevant. Because if you take ownership of your kids and the music they listen to and the friends they circulate themselves with, this conversation, this complex conversation that we're talking about right now is much easier because they understand this already, you know what I mean, when it's coming up. You see what I'm saying? And then, like, you know, the education, when I say, you know, being responsible for the education, we live in an entire system where y'all, I don't say y'all, well, I'm taking accountability. We are allowing white folks to teach us everything we know. How do you expect to overturn oppression when we still send our kids to schools where white folks control the narrative? They're not meant for you to be the smartest people in the world. Like we were talking about vertical integration, like we automatically think to jump and run to a bank. They don't do that. They all work within each other. You see what I'm saying? They teach you one way but live another behind the scenes. That's why Catholic school costs so much. That's why these private institutions cost so much. You can't get access to the information. It's a secret society, and that's what they live in amongst us. So my thing is, like my girl here, her mother and father decided to, like, you know what? Hey, I'm homeschooling my children. She was homeschooled. And she adapts to the world. I've seen her adapt. She adapts to the world, and she has no problems adapting because of how she was taught. She doesn't even have a college degree, but guess what? She make over $100,000 a year. You see what I'm saying? It ain't got nothing to do with any of that. So my thing is, if we take responsibility for ownership in general, and I mean ownership of us, from the root of it, because I don't allow my kids to listen to none of this crazy stuff. You know why? Because it don't mean nothing. And I walk out of session, and I've done it plenty of times. I've known to walk out of with A-list artists because they whack. Because you're not teaching nothing. You're not teaching nothing, and I don't care about this bread. I don't care about the money. I'm realer than that. I got an 11-year-old, he out there right now and on the computer somewhere, and my 3-year-old daughter, you know what I mean? I got 2 kids. I take responsibility for, you know, I take accountability and responsibility for everything, and the people that I work with the big platforms that they have. They got 5 million followers on the ground. They got 10 million followers or 125 million. You think I'm not gonna care? Because that affects how our children are raised. And then we get to these conversations right here on the whole and be like, man, well, we don't understand like economics. Because you brainwashing your kids to only go out here and buy everything that the white person is selling.
Consumer,
You see what I'm saying? So that's a whole other ownership piece in conversation. So I mean, I could go over that. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We'll go on this one tangent, and what Tony just mentioned is that, like, us as a people, we have the tools to resolve everything we're doing right now. Like right now, we're the #1 consumers in this country. We spend
That's a reflection of a mindset.
Exactly. We spend about $1.9 trillion a year. You know, if we were a nation, we'd be the 9th richest nation in the world.
Yes.
If the 40 million black folks in this country put $18 aside, that can create our own bank of like over almost $1 billion that we can then finance and do our own things. We have the ability, we have the intellect, we have all that. It's all about coming together and making that happen.
Too technological to be. We got too much
Well,
technology
these
to be
panels
poor.
are very informational. I'm glad to be here with you guys. You know, because that's good information. Because I've experienced that in my years of coming along, going to the banks, seeing how we buy and how we in our economy in our neighborhoods. Growing up when there were Jewish stores, there were no black stores. So now you see a lot more black stores and black businesses. So when I had the chance to be a owner, I was proud of myself because I'm in the black community, so people can look at me as I look at people growing up. So I was happy about that. So, but what we're saying is that we can support ourselves. We put our monies in our communities, we spend more than anybody. That's why we have Chinese carryouts in the black community, because we buy.
Yeah.
They open almost 24 hours. They
And-
buy.
and-
They
and-
will.
And it's also the black banks that are, they get the loans from to fund those businesses in our communities.
Yeah.
So that's how they make their money. So that's what you gotta recognize, that these black banks are here to lend money, but you have to come to them with that business plan, whatever they want to lend to you. But from there, if you have relationships, you probably get a better rate on those loans than you would from the bank. Because they don't know you until you build up that trust. That's when they wanna work with you more.
Don't need a microphone. See, all of what we're saying is fine. But I'm sorry for those that didn't hear my presentation earlier. But the problem is not that we don't have what we need, but what we have, we are not collaborating enough with each other and supporting those that are successful to help you become successful. Trust is a critical issue in our community.
Yeah,
I've been
it's a
here
trauma.
since 1951. I'm a homeowner, me and my wife, and we okay. But that doesn't mean anything. See, we're caught in a Eurocentric individual kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you all said it. Today is a perfect example. I don't know whether you all, I learned a whole lot.
Yes.
Because we don't come together to have these kind of sessions to see how can we help go-go, how can we help black stores. When I say we, I'm not talking about you getting a store. How can you make sure that store stays? How can you make sure my brother is completely successful? How can you, and see, one of the problems is too many of our black leaders in the community have faked the funk and gone away from what they should be doing. So that becomes a thing where we have to, do you understand there would be no capitalism without cooperative work?
Yes.
See, Sam and I are involved with a global cooperative movement that shows you how to make resources just from being in the cooperative. Not, and I don't want to take us off base because we on base. That's why we need the local initiating committee, the super initiating committee that represents the interests of all the people. Not even just the people who are conscious doing good things, but those brothers and sisters who are lost. They need to be educated. And you can't send them to somebody else's school to get the kind of education we're talking about. We have an 8-year camp that my wife and I have been doing for 8 years for girls 5 through 13. We're extremely successful. Yeah, we get grants, but we get more money from the community than we do in grants because they trust us in what we're doing with the children. So what I'm saying is, the first thing we need to do is to find out the great human resources we got, because we got plenty of them. It's not finding out where the money is at, because you ain't gonna get it at the bank.
Right.
But you can get it from the human resources of the things that people are doing, and make sure that not one business comes back on the block, but 11 of them come back. You follow what I'm saying? See, it's critical that we recognize it. My brother that's into the music, I'm a musicologist, you know, and folks were like my age, they're like, go-go. I helped go-go happen in DC. You understand? I mean, I was going to the go-go. So I understand that is something that we own, but you can't give it away because you want to get a contract with somebody, you understand? And you sell it away. So it comes back to education, trusting one another, building local initiating committees, not to follow the work or the mindset of us, to get support for your business. That's critical. Y'all know how many billionaire black people we got on the planet? But those resources mean nothing if all those billions of dollars are helping somebody else. So what we need to do is to support people on the way up.
Yes.
We need to have solution meetings.
That's right, brother. So all I'm saying, and I don't want to take us off, I'm gonna stop, but see, we have to understand that this is the work.
Yes.
Coming together to know what resources we have and to make sure we are supported. So that's why Brother Sam put this together.
Yes.
And so we can't stop and feel good and go out the door. We have to make commitments. That's why what he's doing with the local initiating committee, many of y'all might not know nothing about what's going on in Africa. But Africa is in you. And in DC, I'm telling you, I've seen it. They write 30 and 40-year plans down.
Yes.
See, I was here when white flight took place.
Yeah.
But they were clear that they were only leaving to come back.
Yeah.
We have to understand. You know, I hear people say there's no more Chocolate City. That's not true. Chocolate City is still here.
Walking
This is not
dogs.
the numbers of Chocolate City.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hearing it right now. This is Chocolate City. So now what
Yeah.
we have to figure out, when I say we, I'm not just talking about us in the room, how do we be supportive of them? How do we interface? How do I know, send people to her shop? How do I make sure that people know Go Now is moving into brand and ownership? Those things are critical, so my grandchildren know, as he said earlier. So we have the solutions. That's what I was saying earlier. What we don't have is collaboration and working together because we've been disjointed. And in closing, it's very important. Let's take Africa, for example. What they did to stop Africa from rising, because it's land, brother.
Yeah.
Everybody's in Africa getting resources, big time. And it's opening up for us too. And if you watch Ghana, because Ghana has passed the US, but they carved it up.
Yes.
They made 50-some countries.
Yes.
And separated all those countries from one another. So they don't got no power.
Yeah.
Hey, if we had the United States of Africa, this whole world would be there.
And that's why we fight. We fight for
They have
African
that
United
black
States.
African.
Seriously. No, the reason we say Africa, that's what we're fighting for. But the point is, that means you don't have to go back to Africa. But Africa has to come to you. All the African people in DC should be able to go to a source and say, I need this help. Financially, people power. That can happen, y'all, quicker than you think. But if we sit back on our laurels and don't take advantage of what's going on, don't worry about Donald Trump and them.
Right.
No, I'm just saying, I'm saying because they keep you away from doing the kind of practical self-reliance and self-determination things. So consequently, but it is important to recognize not just here, everywhere, every city in the United States is going through gentrification. If you go to Detroit, you wouldn't believe it. You understand what I'm saying? So, but we have to recognize this is the capital, and the gentrification plan is not a plan. They don't care about us. They coming. Watch how they moving houses even up high. So we got to be clear. We have to have a plan. We can't just be defensive.
Yes.
We have to go on to the offense.
Yes.
So that means how do we figure out ways and means of setting up some ways so my sister don't have to go through what she had to go through to get back in business in that area. And we can do that. My brother hit the nail on the head. There's nothing we can't do. I mean, they wouldn't exist if we didn't do what we're doing. Capitalism exists and white supremacy because black people hold it up, not white people.
Yeah.
Black people. So all I'm saying to y'all, please don't feel good when you hear all these good presentations and go out the door and don't know how you're gonna play a role to make sure you can either get more knowledge or we can replicate the same and go forward with it. And that's what he's doing with this shit. Because we don't only deal with this, we deal with health. And on down the line, later on he's gonna talk about that. But it is important for us to lock in, y'all.
Before we get into that,
I'm sorry.
actually,
I don't want to get on tangents. Excuse me.
we're going to weave it all together. At this point, while you guys are listening to the rest of the presentation, please make it a point to sign the petition. From what I recall, the petition has spaces for like names, phone numbers, all that. Definitely, please sign it. We're planning a town hall.
Yes.
All right, it's still tentative. But the idea is, and the panelists, I want to ask you this offline. Please think about it. Just think about this. We want to present people in the community who have resources for the problems that are facing our community in the spirit of being solution-oriented, right? So the tentative date, we have to discuss it amongst ourselves, will be around Juneteenth, but we want our people to come together and not just talk about problems, but rather to be surrounded with people behind tables who have solutions to those problems. You understand? And that's what this whole thing is about. Just collecting people from different industries. We've outlined 7 or 8 goals when concerned with music, intergenerational relationships, economics, spirituality, all of the above pretty much. Health especially. All these goals, and the idea isn't about starting a new organization. It's like if you're doing whatever in those places, you come together and we figure out how to organize, even if it's starting like a large, whatever the case is, we all brainstorm that at these meetings and then we go out and we execute it. With that being said, I want to give the floor to my very patient elder here in the front. If you still have that question, please tell me you do.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, sir.
I do have a question. I want to make a statement. First, I'm here because of a radio interview that I heard just yesterday, including you gentlemen. And right before then, I was listening to Dr. J.
Yes, that's right.
And then I heard this show, I said, wow, something I can participate in. So I'm 65, I'm a small business person for 5 years, doing some things I've always wanted to do, never to do them. But now I've developed the discipline to do them. So as I listen to you all, and the guy, the real estate guy, Miss Wanda even, she said she came down on 7th Street in 2004, and I want to ask her, that's when she owned the business, or was she down there before then? Because I lost my sight on 7/10 in 1999, and there was a Wanda doing hair down there. I don't know if it was her, but it was a black guy that owned most of those buildings. But, you know, and I heard about the incident on 7th and Florida. So I'm a native Washingtonian, grew up on Bay Street, you know, went to Dunbar, went to Cadoza, went up and down 7th Street. Like I said, I lost my sight on 7th Street as a direct result of the way I was living. But now I'm in a position to help. And so when I'm a real estate guy, have you had, you know, so I started off by saying that I was going to help my family. Whoever was the most credit worthy, I was going to help them to become a homeowner. So have you seen that kind of model in what you're doing, sir? You said you was going to.
What I've seen, thank you for asking the question, is a lot of people, you know, most real estate agents get their business from the people that they know, their network. And so it ties into what Wanda was saying earlier. Network is really, you have a lot of wealth within your network. However, as you know, as us as black folks, some of us don't have the credit necessary to actually buy things. And so rather than what I've seen other agents do, oh, no, they're not ready, so don't worry about it, is like, what can I do to help them get their credit in positions? And so I've partnered with credit builders who have courses and classes to help people get their credit in better positions that lead them to be in a position to actually rent or actually buy something.
That's great. That's great.
Have you become aware of, you know, you said earlier about, you know, taking 18 months to 2 years to become credit worthy, but have you come across any clients that needed just to eliminate a debt?
Yes, definitely. So there's, literally a few months ago, it was my aunt. She was looking for a place to rent, and I told her, if you're gonna look for something to rent in this city now, the criteria is that, you know, fair housing law says you cannot discriminate against anybody, but the way in which they work around that is saying that, hey, all right, we do accept voucher holders, but you gotta have a 6 or 650 credit score. So you know that happens, we don't even have that. So it's like, all right, well, let's get you in that credit building course. They will help you recognize what is on your credit and what you need to eliminate. And within 2 months, she was able to get to the score she needed to get to where she needed to rent. So there's many cases like that where it's just 1 or 2 things that you need to clear up, understanding that, you know, if it was over 7 years, it gets forgotten, understanding, hey, you get your points up, all you gotta do is actually call some of these places and dispute those things. Like these small little things can definitely help with your credit score and help you as you move forward during the process.
One more question. Is there, you know, this is my 20th year of blindness, so a lot of things I, you know, just visibly don't see anymore. When I came up in the era talking about 7th Street, I walked up and down 7th Street all my life, went to church off of 7th Street, went to high school off of 7th Street, junior high school. So are there still that, you know, and back then, it wasn't us, but shop owners live over top of their businesses. So is that a model that's still going on, could go on? Because, you know, I might be more apt to help a young man financially if I know I can reap my money back, you know, sooner than later.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so
you know, if you want, you know, want to start a business and it, you know, it could be a business and a place of residence.
So the one thing the closest I've done to something similar to that is that a lot of people don't realize is, as I mentioned, the FHA loan is you put in a minimum of 3.5% down. That's backed up by Freddie Mac. People don't realize that you can get up to a 4-unit building using residential loan products. So you can live in one unit and run out the other three. That should be the start of your business and how your business plan works, and as you grow from that. So touching on what you just said about the living up top of the shop, that's definitely something. It's more or less when you go to the bank, you gotta come up with that business plan, show exactly what it is, what's going on with that business. Are you gonna lease it out to someone else that's gonna acquire that while you live upstairs? It's more or less just coming with a plan, and that's really what it is.
Yeah, ECAT. Mama Sylvia.
One of the questions you asked, is this the same Wanda on 7th Street? No, it was another Wanda on 7th Street. I think she worked in the shoe shine store that was there.
Oh,
But
well, she had her own place, but it was in that area, in between those buildings. The
In
shoe
between?
shop, yeah, the shoe shop, the
Okay.
record store.
yeah, in 2003, then that would be me. Before then. But before I came to 7th Street, I was at 12th and U Street, over top of the Island Restaurant. So my first business started in 1997. And then from there, I moved to 7th Street in hope of purchasing the building because I wanted ownership of my business. But then when development came, the buildings weren't worth a lot of money at that time. I think the building at most was worth $200,000, which I could purchase easily. But they kept up. Well, whoever had the most money. Okay, so if the developers kept coming in over the price of the building. So from $200,000 to $750,000 was the maximum the building that they would get for the building. The developers doubled that. So they bought a building because it was too much. It was still needed to be done, even though I did the complete renovation. So when we talk about ownership and what they can come in and bid over you.
Yeah.
More than what the building is worth.
Yeah.
You have no equity, it's nothing there. Right. So, and you can be paying a mortgage for something that, you cannot, your business is not making that kind of money, So that's what happened in my particular situation. I was trying to purchase the building. I moved there, did renovations. My landlord was like 89, so when he decided to sell, I would be in position to do that. My money saved and purchased the building. But new development came and they just priced us out. They priced me out, and everyone else had they had the handshake agreement.
Yeah.
So if you have nothing on paper, then they can give you a 30 to 60 day notice. For me, when they told me I had to move, the only thing I had left was a 10-year lease. You buy the building, you buy the tenant, and that bought me time to be able to negotiate and come back like I did.
Yeah.
Are you in that building that was owned by Mr. Dean?
Yes. Yes, Mr. D was a great man. But the family, he was older, so the family sold it instead of him. But Mr. Dean was a wonderful man and understanding about just being in business and owning a business and owning the building. So you taught me a lot.
Glad to hear that.
You know what I like seeing here today? I like seeing this exchange of stories and just the intergenerational communication. This exchange right here was so wonderful because of the name dropping and just like the landmarks and all that. It just took me back to a time, and it's really good just hearing stuff like that and letting people know that DC is still here. And this goes into my next question. So I'm in teacher mode right now, and I hear us talking, being solution oriented. Could you guys speak to a time, or could you guys speak to your efforts, to impart this knowledge on the next generation of people in your industry? I know you have some people working with you right now, some employees, are you talking to them about ownership? Tom P, are you talking to new producers about ownership? Charles, I know you talk to family as well. Are you talking to other people about, well, of course you are talking about ownership, but talk more about those conversations.
Well, me personally, I know I'm always trying to give all information. That's just who I am. And so, yeah, and I teach kids, every Tuesday, like Kelly Miller in Northeast. And I got brought in by Do the Right Thing organization is because I've been working with them for the past 2 summers for about a month and a half at a time, where I bring in other musicians in, and we create original content from the music, and then we write lyrics, and then I teach them how to rap the lyrics, then I teach them, then we record the song, and then we make a video, and I get a budget allocated to me, and I take some of that budget and I go out and I get I put something, I give them a motive. I say, okay, you guys, because it's hard to get a lot of kids to sit and understand and go through this process. So I say, hey, y'all want Shy Glizzy on this song, or y'all want Fat Trail, or whoever they look up to? That's how I get them to sit and listen to me for the whole month. Right? And I can actually do that. And I got Light Show to come out and do that. And in between this entire process, it's not just it's not just me teaching them how to make music. It's me teaching them how to be organized, how to work amongst each other. Because I get plenty of students say, well, I don't want to rap with her. Yeah. I don't like her. She can't rap. I'm like, well, you gotta give a person, you gotta work with people. This is how life works. You're gonna work next to people when you become 18, 19, and 20 that you absolutely hate. Right. And guess what? Y'all gotta make a paycheck together. Yeah. More importantly, you gotta make a paycheck. Yeah. You can't say that. You know what I'm saying? But you still gotta collectively work amongst each other. And in between that process, I teach them how to register things. I teach them how to copyright things. I teach them, at this stage, even if they don't understand tick for tack 100%, they're introduced to the idea of it. So when they come back years later, they understand, oh, I remember Mr. Tony taught us how to do this. Let me go figure this out. Right. You see what I'm saying? So that's where my ownership comes in. Like I said earlier, I really take an interest in the youth, because I think the youth is the spark plug and the seed to all of this becoming a much easier conversation.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
For me, I talk to as many people who's willing to hear to learn more about how to build wealth through real estate. For me, I focus a lot, like my purpose in life, I told myself, is to build wealth for myself, my family, my community. And the best way that I know how to do that is through my network. As being an independent contractor and a realtor, I can choose who I want to work with. And so when I have an opportunity in which, hey, someone says, hey, I need a credit builder, or hey, I need a landscaper, hey, I need this sort of plumber, electrician, I make sure I try to at least give us the first shot of that business opportunity. And so as my background was being in property management, I managed about 400 units all over DC, and I was in charge of the maintenance and the turnovers and things of that nature. And so I had relationships with calling up vendors and say, hey, I have all these buildings that need HVAC work, I need electricians, I need stuff. And over the years, they're doing very, very well in their businesses. And so now, as I'm doing sales full time, I kept those relationships up, and that's helped that grow. So that ties into giving back. One of the things that I'm planning to do in the future is we have a deficit of people who have a trade skill. And you don't have to necessarily need a college degree in order to get a trade school, because that's what they took out of high school, is vocation. Because you can leave and be a bricklayer, be an electrician, a plumber, and I can tell you all of my vendors didn't have the best education, but they had financial stability, and they knew that their job was recession proof. And any market, someone's going to need plumbing, someone's going to need electrical work, someone's going to need some HVAC work, and if they would feed their families and grow their business at the rate that they felt comfortable doing.
That's great.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do for my business to grow with my community is to get involved with the community, like the elementary schools, the seniors buildings. We bring the seniors up, they get hair services real cheap. And with the elementary school kids, instead of just going over to the school and talking to them, they have a project. We bring the kids over to the salon while we're working and let them interact with the barbers, the stylists, and the clients, especially those who want to be news reporters. So they have the cameras and microphones, and they talk to the barbers and they ask you real questions, so they want real answers, But it's really nice. And then one of the things also is being in the area that I'm in, 7th and T Street. People come from different homes for different reasons and go through different things. So sometimes, you have to go out and you gotta reach out to people that's on drugs and see how you doing. First of all, everybody on 7th Street candy, so every time they come by, they come in and look at you, look for Miss Wanda. But you still have to reach out to people who's like, they're on drugs and they want to come off, they have no address or anything like that. So we were able to, talk to a couple people, and give them an address. And they come back, they're good citizens now. When I say good citizens, they have jobs, they're not on drugs anymore, they change their life around completely. So reaching out to your community to help them be there for whatever they need, that means a lot. So that's why you have to reach out to your community for whatever they need. Same thing like for Howard University. Amazing school, amazing students. They come down to my salon to support this black business, and they get a great service, but they are our biggest avenue of money. Like you said, you reach out to communities and you support, they do that. They do that. And so even when we use all our money to get back into our salon, they know how we're gonna pay next month's rent. So many Howard students came down, paid the rent on time. We've been there 5 years. Our rent has always been paid.
Let's give our panelists a hand. Got a question?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I had a question earlier that was slipped my mind. I wanted to know, is it a difference buying land, like the land, not the buildings on top of that, but the land in DC that it is, like say Maryland or whatever? I know.
I think you can buy land.
Right, exactly. That's what I was trying to get.
You can't.
I have one question. Now, where the giant is down 7th Street, that land was owned by a black woman.
Oh.
Yeah. The land was owned by a black woman, and she recently died. And where the land belonged to her, so it went to the son and the carekeeper, because I thought the same thing. You cannot own land in DC, but you can. Not all over. And the other thing, Howard University owns the land for the CPS. Right? So I can't speak of everything, but I know that there's a couple there's a couple of, but I was surprised about the woman that owned the land at the Giant. So forever they get rent.
So there is pockets of certain land, certain areas, like there's thing where people can buy a lot of land, and from there you have to go then through the city to get the permitting process of what you're gonna do with the structure, and that can take forever.
Yeah, I've been told, like Thomas said, like you can't, like it's all federal land.
But you know what though?
That's the theory.
Yeah,
Right,
right. Yeah, until you go down there and see that, yeah, there is land available in the city.
There's some but not a lot of
Right,
land.
it's not a
But
lot.
you have to find it, but I guess any new land, no. But that land was definitely owned by a black woman.
So I have a question for you, and it's a great discussion, very happy to be here, just listening to everybody. One of the points that you made is like when you were in property management, right, and being able to, utilize your network and people that you know. So before I ask my question, I just think that's really important, because a lot of times we don't take responsibility for, our businesses and giving a quality service, a quality product. And it forces us who want to support us to go out and use other businesses. So, as a business owner as well, I think it's very important for us to just, be more responsible and accountable for the services that we provide, so that we can continue to build our own network and have that trust that, a lot of times is just not there because of those experiences that we've had. But my question for you is, you have a lot of people who, travel from state to state. And so when you're utilizing the first time home buying programs, is that state specific, or are you able to be a first time home buyer and use programs in different states?
Yes, every state has their own first time home buyer program.
Okay.
So I just named just the ones in DC. Maryland
Right.
has like the Maryland Mortgage Program, and then there's various lending institutions that have grants tied into people who are service workers, so teachers, firefighters, police officers. So it's more or less finding a realtor or finding a lender, somebody that has that network that points you in the right direction.
All right, so if there are no more questions, let's give our panelists another hand. briefly, tell us how people can reach out to y'all if they have any more questions, or you can just promote your businesses or current ventures you got going on.
Okay, my salon is Wanda 17, 1851 7th Street Northwest. And you can reach us at 202-621-7119.
Keep it simple. You can find me at Official Tone P on everything. Official Tone P.
You can find me on my Instagram page is CViewJr, CVIEWJR. I hang my license with Real Living at Home, and I'm part of the Jason Martin Group, and our office is 1350 Florida Avenue Northeast in Trinidad. It's right on the corner of Orange and Florida Avenue, right where the church is. My number is 202-210-2211. And as Sam had mentioned, I'm here and I want to help at least 35 people either buy, sell, or invest in real estate. I already helped two clients that are investors. So if you are just looking for a creative way to get into real estate, you can please give me a call. I can help you out.
Repeat your number again, please.
It is 202-210-2211. And email is charles@jasonmartingroup.com.
I want to thank y'all for coming out today for a very important discussion, and a discussion that's important more so because we're speaking about this in the context of Pan-African Federalism, and in the sense that we have to take control of our own affairs as African people all across the world, especially in Washington, D.C. I often call Washington, D.C. The epicenter of the Babylon system, because if you're talking about so-called first world countries, the United States, this is pretty much where everything happens. It's, multinational corporations are based here, and Washington, D.C. is pretty much the capital city of all of that, which is why it's a very important city, which is why, before home rule and after home rule, black people had a hard time in Washington, D.C. interacting with the federal government and Congress pretty much, and that's very important. And people got to understand that as African people, we have to have a race-first mentality. And there's nothing wrong with having that. It's all about just understanding who you are and who you have to look after. It's individual, family, then nation. And in the interest of that, this is what the Pan-African Federalist Movement speaks to. How can we as African people do what we're continuing to do, but on the same line, along the same goal? So right here, we have what is a process called answering the call pretty much. And the call pretty much, goes like this. And anybody who, is a part of the Pan-African Federalist Movement, they pretty much answer the call. That's all you have to do. You're not paying dues. You're not doing anything out of the ordinary. You're just answering the call pretty much, right? So I'm going to read, and, and if you can vibe with it, if it's you, and you say you answered the call, that's all you have done. You answered the call, and you're going to continue working in your capacity and doing what you're doing toward Pan-African Federalism, all right? So, do you believe that the political unification of the African states, like Tone P said, is a matter of the utmost urgency for Africans on the continent and diaspora? Do you agree with Kwame Nkrumah when he stated, it is clear that we must find an African solution to our problems, and that this can be found in African unity? Divided we are weak, united Africa can become one of the greatest forces for good in the world. Do you think that Sheikh Anta Diop was right when he said, African unity, I feel will come from the base and develop as the undercurrent to the present political sterility and economic stagnancy rampant on our continent. A feeling of general insecurity generated by the ineptitude of African regimes in dealing with the most crucial issues will result in the masses entering the picture sooner or later. As generalized insecurity spreads, no African regime will be able to prevent the masses from seeing that the ineptitude of their own government is linked to this general insecurity. At this point, I feel the masses will find within their own ranks the type of political vanguards made up of young, altruistic, and politically motivated Africans to unleash a powerful continent-wide movement global movement at that. This political undercurrent would eventually be forced to sweep away the objective obstacles standing in the way of the Continental African Federation. Do you agree with Malcolm X at the second OAU summit in 1964 when he said that African problems are our problems and our problems are African problems? Are you sick and tired of watching Africans being helpless when faced with natural or man-made calamities? Do you believe that being an African ought to be an asset and not a liability? Do you believe in the need for a strong African state that can protect the interests of African people wherever they reside, to demand and expect to get the reparations of the wrongs that were done through slavery and colonialism? If you found yourself answering yes to at least one of these questions, then you have answered the call. And now it's incumbent upon you, upon leaving here, to sign a petition. I'm not forcing y'all, but please sign a petition, stay connected, but also spread the word about Pan-African federalism. And for those of y'all who signed a petition, come April 20th, as we do every month, we meet at a specific location. Of course, everybody's, again, not entitled to come to meetings because we all can't make meetings, we're all busy, but come to a few meetings and contribute monetarily with resources, whichever way you can, to build towards Pan-African federalism. Once again, which is a system through which we are in control of our own affairs. And Pan-African federalism, before I close, because we spoke about this many, many times, it is the pathway through which we can get back to our old way of life, where we can actualize the laws of Ma'at, where we can actualize our old spiritual and political and communal systems. Pan-African federalism is synonymous with communalism, not capitalism, but communalism. You have to understand that African people, no matter if you're a capitalist, you're a socialist, you're still practicing communalism within that paradigm.
Humanism.
So for example, when you have co-ops, we spoke about co-ops up here, right?